China, I think, has basically one big overarching priority that it's been messaging everywhere from its NDC to the 15th five-year plan recommendations that it put out about a month ago to the keynote speeches that Environment Minister Huang Wenqiu gave earlier today at the China Pavilion's opening ceremony, which is basically to make sure that in the absence of the US, there is still a meaningful signal sent from this COP that multilateralism is still important and that, you know, even without the kind of driving force of perhaps US influence on the process, there can still be a meaningful consensus on climate action. It was really interesting today, actually, at the China Pavilion. The opening ceremony had speakers from the Chinese delegation, but also featured Simon Steele from the UNFCCC, Selwyn Hart, Inga Anderson from UNEP, and speakers as well from international NGOs from across the world. So really, to me, sending this kind of very strong signal that, you know, there isn't that China is really not pushing, or China is really pushing for a cohesive international voice on climate action. For me, another thing that's also quite interesting is how China is trying to ensure that there is still or that there is a greater economic narrative around the green transition. So, especially compared to COP28, which I was on the ground floor, and COP29, which our China section editor Wang Yuansong was at, I think there's a lot more narratives around just transitions, around kind of how the clean energy transition can translate into development and into economic growth. Um, at the same time, I think we're going to see very similar kind of agenda fights around, for example, unilateral trade measures, a lot of messaging from the Chinese delegation on the need to avoid protectionism, trade tariffs, maybe carbon taxes, that kind of thing. Um, and as noted in the carbon brief analysis of China's NDC, very little on China's expected tradition, also, or any kind of expectations around phasing down coal usage. But I think in general, the Chinese kind of delegation in statements it's been putting out recently has been very kind of clear that it's not necessarily pushing for a big headline flashy figure, but it wants the COP to show that the international consensus around climate action is still strong.